If you folks have experience with buying blades or trying to get sinks off of Corian countertops, please let us know, because once again, we are in uncharted territory.
Meanwhile, I think I'm going to start writing that children's book, Dorian's Corian.
I thought I read that book.
Welcome to the Fine Homebuilding Podcast, our weekly discussion of building, remodeling, and design topics aimed at anybody who cares deeply about the craft and science of working on houses. This is Senior Editor Patrick McComb. Today I'm joined by Rob Wadsack, Digital Brand Manager.
Hello.
Kiley Jacques, GBA Editor.
Hello.
And producer Jeff Rose.
Hi there.
You can find previous podcasts and check out the show notes at finehomebuilding.com/podcast. That's it. That's all I'm going to say today. Rob, how's your window coming?
Window? I haven't touched a window in a while. Now, well, first of all, I've just been continuing to insulate that wall, and I think I sent you and Matt a little video the other day of me with my infrared camera pointing it at different parts of my kitchen wall on a sunny day, and it was cool.
And you measured a difference in temperature of your wall parts depending on whether they had been air barriered or not, right?
Yeah, well, so there was the lower half of the wall, the whole way across now has sheathing and rock wool, and it's all been air sealed. And the upper half has just got black plastic sheeting over it. And it was about 45 degrees outside. And they were pointing an infrared camera at the inside wall. I think it was about almost 68 degrees in the insulated section, and then it dropped to the low 60s at the upper section. I know that's not a big difference, but it was in a couple of feet span right where the transition was, and I just thought it was kind of neat to see.
I would imagine if the outside temperature was 0, how much different that would be,
right?
Oh,
yeah. I mean, it was, we were all talking about a delta T of only 15, 20 degrees. So.
Yeah. So how's the family dealing with the disruption? They're
fine. They're like, I'm moving at a fast enough pace that nobody's complaining about the mess. but I'm not moving totally fast because I'm trying to balance my projects. Because as you know, I'm always trying to do creative projects out in my metal shop, and I got to do a little bit of metal work out there this yesterday on my day off.
What were you doing, man?
I'm starting another one of those tree tables.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, this one's not going to be quite as elaborate. It's just a little side table, not a big dining table like that crazy one I built last year.
Is this a commission or is this for you guys?
It's actually for a friend who I promised I would build one for a really long time ago, and I'm finally getting around to it.
So how much time do you devote to something like that versus your remodeling project that has your kitchen all torn apart?
Well, see, that's the problem is I'm not really a planner. So it's like I've found that the only way a friend of mine does this. He has a day of the week for different types of projects. And that's the only way he makes sure he does all of them. So it's like a certain day of the week is for remodeling, certain day of the week is for yard work, certain day of the week is for working on his car.
There's something to be said for that.
Yeah, so I'm kind of trying that. So Wednesdays, which I'm trying to take off on a regular basis, are going to be my creative project days.
Kiley, both, and I think we need Wednesdays off too. We don't know how you've arranged
right.
this.
I have creative projects I want to do.
Yeah, what's on your list?
I'm actually thinking a whole lot about indoor air quality for a variety of reasons. Primarily because I've been spending a lot of time at my painting easel with oil paints and a mason jar of odorless paint in my hand.
Yeah, which is stinky.
It doesn't stink at all.
Oh, really?
That's the problem.
Yeah, you're breathing
it lulls you into a sense of well-being or comfort.
Well, that's why oil painters are always so happy.
Yeah, or crazy, one or the other. So yeah, I've been spending tons and tons of time at my easel, and I've my smoke alarm's gone off a number of times because of my oven situation.
That's bad.
So anyway, between that and having friends in Seattle and family in Oregon, and I do go to the gym, and I think about the ventilation system there, which looks robust, but I actually have an inquiry into the owners of the gym to find out what the ventilation system is.
Hold up right there. So yesterday, Kiley sent me a photograph of this grill in the ceiling of this commercial building, and she's like, can you tell anything about this ventilation system from this photograph?
Yeah. The ducts alone are probably, 24 inches wide. I mean, they're enormous. So I look up there and I think, this is an excellent system, but I want to know. So anyway, I've been giving a lot of thought between that and what I'm reading on GBA all the time. I'm obsessed with indoor air quality. And so I think I'm about to make a purchase, and I have to spend some time today looking through. I found a great, seemingly great, I haven't read through it all, list of products on the, it's a, what is it, wire cutter from the Times. And it's all these air purifiers. So I think it's a good solution for me. I've got, my art studio is essentially my living room / kitchen. So that's the room in which I need to target my air purification efforts. So I think
the jury is still out on these things, though, Kiley.
I know, but I think it would be better than absolutely nothing. I mean,
what about opening a window?
Well, I have my windows open and my fans going, but here we are in, October's approaching. That's not, and I have a wood burning stove. So all of these things have me thinking about what I need to do. And quite frankly, that's what I can afford to do. So I'm going to do that.
Have you considered any of those really basic, because your house is small and open plan, any of those really basic HRV type setups? Like who is it? Who makes that one? Lunos. That one.
Yeah. We were just talking about that the other night on the BS and Beer show.
Basically, two exhaust and intake fans that just work in tandem and alternate back and forth with a heat absorbing core. Is that right?
Yeah, that's what they use. And apparently they're very common in European apartments. That's the solution there. So my house is a good candidate for that. I hadn't thought about it.
I'll tell you what, Kiley, let's ask our listeners who may have more experience in this subject area than we do. Mm-hmm. Are these like countertop air purifiers an effective way to clean up your air of solvents and other things? I would like to know, because I think a lot of people are worried about this for good reason. So
there's a lot going on right now. HEPA filters are huge on the West Coast right now. People are buying them up.
So those are great for particulates, but I don't think they work for solvents evaporate.
Not for me, but for people who are dealing with smoke. Mm-hmm.
I wonder if they have filters like that for solvents that in those types of situations. Because, in a welding situation, like I use a respirator when I'm welding, when I'm doing my metal work, and it is of a quality that claims to remove actual organic vapors.
Well, so any painting respirator does that too, right? It's capturing the solvents in activated charcoal. So, I mean, sure, you can do that, but you first need to know what you need to clean out of the air, and then you need to target those things, right? I don't think it's a one-size solution.
For sure.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But I'm shooting from the hip here, and no, I'm not scared to do that. But hopefully someone knows more than me about this subject.
I'd like to hear.
Jeff, what have you been doing?
More appliance repair, strangely enough.
Oh boy, everyone's favorite thing.
Yeah. I was getting ready to go out and work in the yard on Sunday, and Robin came out and said, "Please tell me I'm doing something wrong with the dishwasher because it's not working."
Well, so what was wrong?
Well, I haven't actually found the problem. It was an electrical problem. It's like, all right, well, maybe it's just the switch. The wall switch is like, nope, not that. The GFI before that, nope. So took the panel off. There's power getting to the dishwasher, but nothing's turning on. Thought maybe it was the switch on the dishwasher. Took that apart, cleaned it because it was the contacts were pretty dirty. Mm-hmm. No joy. So I think it's probably the main control panel.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
That sounds inexpensive.
Well, and hard find because it's an 18-year-old dishwasher. But it's a really nice dishwasher. We really like it. So
maybe once again, we can appeal to our listeners who happen to have an 18-year-old Bosch dishwasher that might have a control board lying around, right?
Do you remember there was a time when we were young, Patrick, when there were actually appliance repair shops and someone would actually get in there and solder connections if there was something wrong on something?
Well, that's Jeff. Jeff would solder.
I remember a guy coming to fix our console television when I was a kid, right? And he that fascinated me, seeing all the tubes and weird stuff inside there. I was like, oh, I want to be a TV repairman.
I love that image.
Of course, it's a good thing I didn't go down that career path, right? So
How about you, Patrick?
I'll get to it in a little bit, but I did a blower door test on my house this weekend, motivated by one of our listeners, and I'm going to read his feedback later, so I won't go too much into that part of it. But I found that my 740 square foot house has about 6.3 air changes per hour at 50 pascals, which is terrible. Let's face it. So I want to love to do air sealing work. I mean, I see the merit in it. I see the important environmental qualities to it. But honestly, it's horrible, dirty work. And I
I'll come help you, Patrick.
I spend $400 a year on heating fuel, right? So I'm going to do it though. I have an oil forced air furnace.
Yeah,
of course, my oil bill doesn't include the electricity that's used to power the oil burner and the blower motor. So, of course, my energy bills are higher than that would indicate. But it's just not a lot of money. So I have put it off. But the putting it off is past. I am going to do some air sealing. This is the right time of year to do it, to go up in the attic and look for holes, fix some holes in the basement. And I'll keep you guys posted on the improvements. And this has been something that's been brewing in my brain for a long time. So I'm finally getting off my butt and doing it.
I think you need to get Carol out there to shoot some video of this. This would be a great video, right?
Yeah.
And my lovely wife is very good at shooting video, and she's also very good at air sealing. So she will certainly be involved in this project.
And Liam, it's a family affair.
Family affair. Carol's been busy around the landscape. This is a great time to be working on stuff because it's gotten cooler, and you feel like you want to do this stuff before the cold weather gets here. If you live in New England, right? You're just like, oh, we got to get this stuff done. So she put in a rain garden over the last couple weekends, and I'll put photos of that on the podcast page. But I think it's a beautiful thing, and it's going to do a much better job of managing our roof water instead of it pooling in the yard and sometimes flowing back into the basement. So she made this lovely space with rocks and gravel with some wet loving plants, and boy, it's a pretty thing.
Yeah. Rain gardens are awesome.
Should we get to some feedback, folks?
Sure.
Yeah. Let's see.
So this first one, I just got to say, Patrick, I kind of anticipated we would get some feedback after how excitable we were at this topic last time.
Well, I don't think I was on that show. What did you guys talk about?
So we were talking about log homes, Kiley.
Oh, I was on that. Yeah, okay. I hadn't read that. Oh, yeah.
And I got off the show, Rob, after we finished recording. I was like, boy, was I too harsh about that? Anyway, so Phillip writes in, and he had some thoughts. What's up, podcast crew? I was a little surprised by the negative opinions of log homes. We recently blower door tested a new construction milled log home up here in upstate New York. It came in at 1.4 air changes. The logs were sourced and milled locally and eliminated the need for high-embodied energy products like drywall, insulation, and siding. The roof has large overhangs to protect the logs, and I was thoroughly impressed with the attention to detail in all aspects of this house. After seeing and testing this house, I think there's something to be said for the potential of log homes. More research is definitely needed. As always, thank you for an awesome podcast and keep up the good work. Phillip.
That's fair. I remember that conversation. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely some good points in there. I mean, local materials, a lot less manufactured materials going into a house like that. But one of the main points we made was that log homes don't really have a whole lot of insulating value, and that's a pretty impressive air change number for.
And we also made the point that there are many different kinds of ways to make what people describe as a log home. And I think some are more logs than others. Some are more siding with other elements integrated. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, if you like logs, talk to Phillip. Feedback from Nate. On the PT lumber shortage, I just wanted to mention an alternative I hadn't heard anyone discuss yet. In the area where my wife and I are starting to build a cabin, PT 2x6s are completely wiped out of stock, and the treatment plant for the local supplier is having a hard time even getting enough long raw stock to make more 2x6s. They were nearly out of 2x8s as well, so I couldn't even just buy wider and rip them down. So what to do for 2x6 sill plates for my slab-on-grade cabin? I found that LP makes LSL lumber that is treated for use as sill plates. Earlier this year, it was more than double the cost of treated 2x6s, so I'd shrugged it off this option, but after the lumber price increases, it was pretty competitive, and it was actually available. For some, it may be an acceptable alternative to not being able to get your project at all right now. So thanks for that, Nate. That's a good suggestion.
Yeah, I think we have mentioned that in the magazine a couple of issues ago, that new pressure treated LVL was available. I mean, I think most people are thinking of it more for like deck framing, but certainly for sills it makes sense too.
Yeah, you couldn't use this for joists, I don't think, but maybe I'm wrong about that. But like if you had just, as he suggests, plates, which are all compressive load, right? This would be awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, this gets back to a little bit what I was talking about earlier. This is Adam R. from Chittenango, who we've heard from before. Hello, Air Sealing Podcast. Before I get to my question, I must say I'm disappointed in the fact that none of the podcast crew has put up the ACH rating of their homes listed on the website. It should be a requirement that everyone on the Air Sealing Podcast that has a profile page on the website should be required to list the ACH of their house and any powered outbuildings on their profile page. Even better, update the ACH yearly and keep a historical record of any changes. Since you have admitted that you have your own blower door, there really is no excuse for not sharing.
You know, somebody
Kylie,
on GBA,
you're next.
Somebody on GBA started sort of a similar thing in a way. They called for people to report their test results. It's pretty geeky and fun.
Have you measured your house ever, Kylie?
No.
No?
I imagine it's terrible. I know that it's.
Well, we've got a blower door, so.
Well,
I'm coming over, Kylie.
Yeah. Okay. Door's wide open.
So I've used one a couple of times in my house.
And what's your house?
My house is a little hard to come up with a solid number because it's hard to decide which spaces are considered inside and outside the house with all my weird attics and basement.
So
parts.
here's a starting point. The places you live in are the inside. The parts that you don't are outside.
You don't know Rob very well.
Yeah, I seem to remember that the CFM number was something like 7,000 CFM.
Holy crap. So mine was 1150. Which, my house is little, so somebody who had a 3,000 or 4,000 square foot house, they'd be delighted to have 1150 CFM number, but my house is tiny.
What did you say the square footage of your place is?
I think it's 740 square feet, Kylie.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
It's even smaller than mine. I didn't realize that.
If you include all the attic space and the basement on mine, I think I'm over 3,000.
Is that right?
For my house, yeah.
Wouldn't have guessed that.
So we're coming over, and we're going to have to maybe get the open fan setting to blow your house, Rob.
I actually really like this idea. I think we should do it.
I love it because I just love to measure the difference in all the improvements I've been making over the years. True. So I really should get my own blower door. Just keep it here running all the time.
Jeff, are you game? You're going to do this little exercise?
I would love to run a blower doors test. I mean, doing the math would be a little complicated because my house is really complicated. But
well, I'll help you guys do the blower door test, but I'm not going to figure out the cubic volume of the house because that's the suckiest part of the whole process.
Yeah, that's where Matt comes in. Get Matt in on this. Yeah,
because I've got like 3 or 4 different ceiling heights in my house, and then sloped ceilings in the attic, and it's like my daughter just took geometry, so maybe she can help me.
I had to look up how to figure out the cubic feet of a trapezoid shape, like a sloped ceiling with flat ceiling on top. You know what I'm saying? And I was like, I felt like I was back in high school geometry.
Yuck.
Cathedral ceilings and gables and dormers and.
It really is the hardest part, especially for a complex
Come on, Patrick.
shape.
A trapezoid, you just measure the short leg and the long leg.
Shut up.
And divide by 2.
So Adam has a question later on, also related to blower door testing. So we'll talk more about that. It's a good question. So our first question today comes from our friend Barbara, who we haven't heard from in a long time, and I am thrilled to hear from her, as always. Hello, podcast crew. I was just gifted a trailer full of Corian with undermount porcelain sinks and Baldwin brass faucets. I cannot believe my good fortune. I wanted to assemble it all to store it. Until somebody gives me lumber and fasteners to build the rest of a house. I've been watching for a sale in Milwaukee 12-volt oscillating multi-tools because you've all said they're a great tool to have. If I had one, would that be the tools to get these things off the counters? because I can go get one. Cutting the silicone with a knife is hard on my hands.
Oh.
What about jamming a coping saw blade or broken scroll saw blade in the gap and working that around? I think that might work. There's wood reinforcing on the counters that may get in the way of the tool if I work from the bottom. How much offset do these oscillating tools have? I guess I could use the tool to cut the wood off first. I don't think the glue is silicone, though. It's more like a polyurethane glue. Or, okay, so once I get the bathroom counters off the top of the pile, I can address the physical impossibility of the 8-foot counter with the integrated double sink. And there's a section with integrated laundry sink and a solid piece the size of a dining table. It would be a great cutting table for sewing. These pieces must weigh hundreds of pounds, though. I need an oscillating multi-tool and a telehandler. Thanks for any ideas, Barbara.
So fun.
I've never seen
Love
such
this
a
lady.
big
Oh, wait,
pile
shut up,
of...
Rob. I gotta let it finish here. P.S. I got all of this from my Aunt Dorian. Dorian's Corian. It sounds like a children's book.
my
Now, if
favorite
something like elves or talking animals could get under the tarp overnight and cut away that silicone for me, that would be awesome.
Oh, this lady knows how to have fun.
Yeah, it's like one of those trailers.
Who wants to? Go ahead, Rob. You can explain what this looks like.
Yeah, one of those big landscape trailers with the little rack body sides. It's just full overflowing with countertops and undermount sinks.
And they came from the 80s, right? It's this brass.
Bright brass.
And white. Yeah.
She was so upset with how they'd been treated. They're thrown together like that.
Yeah,
I get it.
In the big pile. But
all you had to do was take the
Corian,
tail pieces off, and it would have been much less damaging, right?
Yeah. So the thing is, an oscillating tool might be nice, but I noticed that a lot of those Corian sinks would look like ceramic. So you don't want to be driving one of those saw blades up against the ceramic. But they do make a chisel type blade for those oscillating tools, and that might be a better fit.
So, as luck would have it, you guys have heard me mention Kevin Ireton's feature article on oscillating multi-tools.
Yep.
And one of the great things about being a fine home building editor is sometimes you end up with great stuff that was bought for photography. And among the things are these things I've never used, which came from that feature article. And they make all kinds of knife edge blades for these tools. And some have an offset, as Barbara suggests. That's going to be helpful for the thing she wants to do. And some do not, right? And I'm showing my colleagues the different blades that I have here. And I think I would definitely try some of these things. And I think a multi-tool is probably going to be your best bet. Cutting through that sealant would be agony.
I can't believe it sounds like she tried it.
I think you might get a stiff-bladed putty knife and sharpen the heck out of it, and you could beat on it with a hammer and tap it around to free it off.
Yeah, that was going to be my next suggestion too, Patrick. It's like I would even get maybe a stiff-bladed putty knife and one of those really flimsy, floppy ones, because especially if she's got that wood in the way, she could probably get in there at an angle with a floppy putty knife with a sharp edge on it and just tap it with a hammer. Because the thing about that kind of situation is that it, like she said, if it's a polyurethane or any other really hardened goopy adhesive underneath there, it's like you're not going to saw through the stuff, especially with the ceramic right up against it. So you're going to want to get something just to get some purchase, just to get something underneath the edge there. And once you get a blade underneath there, you'll probably be have a little bit of an easier time working your way around. Maybe even two putty knives at the same time.
Yeah.
Barbara, I'm going to suggest you try a Rockwell RW 8957 serrated slicer and scraper. And what I love about this one is it's a knife edge tool, but it has tiny serrations on it. And it also has the offset in it that I think would make it helpful. And you need to buy this oscillating multi-tool anyway, so just bite the bullet and get it. And
yeah, you can't live without one of those if you're doing weird jobs like this. And what was that other blade held up with the little scalloped edges on it? That looks kind of good too.
Yeah, so this is Imperial Blades, and it's got like a kind of wavy sharpened edge on it, and it also has the offset. This might be another good one to try.
Yeah, basically it looks
there's
like
no model number on this, unfortunately.
Yeah, it basically looks like a putty knife that someone ground some scallops into the end of.
How much does an oscillating tool go for, Patrick?
I think you could get it for about $100 bare tool, Kylie.
Not so much, yeah.
And like in one use,
I was going to say she's going
at
to
the
put it
right
to good
time,
use.
it's going to totally pay for itself in reducing your frustration and making something that would be impossible possible. Right, Rob?
Save your hands
sure.
too.
I want to talk very briefly about blades. Okay, so a lot of people complain about the Sawtooth blades being very expensive, right? And they are. But I recently bought a set of them. It was 25 blades on Amazon for $25.
What?
And I swear to God. And the company is VTOP Mart, vtopmart.net. And they work fine. I will say that the quality control is not as good as the more expensive blades. Like, for example, these blades are made from 2 pieces of steel, and the cutting part is spot welded to the tang that goes on the tool itself. And this one is not perfectly straight, but it doesn't really matter, you know?
Well, I'll tell you what, Patrick, on that, because I've used oscillating multi-tools for demolition, and I've used them for finished carpentry. And it's probably best to have blades for both of those purposes. Buy the cheap blades for your demo work, because as soon as you hit a nail with a good blade, it's destroyed. It's destroyed. And so you have your cheap blades or your old worn out blades that you use for demo, and then you have a couple nice ones that you keep on the side for when you're going to do like letting a baseboard into a cabinet or something more delicate like that.
I remember you saying something similar when you were cutting the corrugated metal for my woodshed. You use these old blades.
Yeah,
for that, like you hang on to stuff to.
I actually buy old stuff from the flea market or garage sales that I use just for demo, so that I'm not using my. And I have one that I keep just for cutting metal, so that I'm not shooting metal scraps into my nice circular saw.
Mm-hmm.
If you folks have experience with buying blades or trying to get sinks off of Corian countertops, please let us know, because once again, we are in uncharted territory.
Meanwhile, I think I'm going to start writing that children's book, Dorian's Corian.
I thought I read that book.
I get a kick out of that lady. Oh, by the way, did you know that she has a YouTube? Let's get people to subscribe to her YouTube page.
What is it, Kiley?
I'll get it on the website. I don't have it in front of me.
Okay, well, we should totally figure that out.
Yeah.
I want to subscribe.
Yeah, she's a pretty crafty lady. I seem to remember.
She's always up to really interesting.
Yep.
This comes from Nathan. Hello, FHB crew. I have a ceiling/floor joist issue that has me stumped on how to best proceed. Some time ago, we discovered a leak coming through our kitchen ceiling, which turned out to be an issue with the bathtub drainage plumbing. After 8 plumber visits, over 2 different plumbers, we seem to have got the leak taken care of. However, once I turned my attention to patching the ceiling back up, I noticed that someone apparently thought it was a good idea to completely cut through the floor joist in order to run the bathtub drain. I've included some pictures so you can see for yourself. How do you recommend going about this repair? I'm especially worried about the weight of the bathtub. A cast iron clawfoot bathtub bearing directly above that severed floor joist. Given the bends in the plumbing run, there really isn't enough space to sister another joist across the gap. Any advice would be much appreciated. Nathan,
Wow.
Did you guys see this floor joist?
Yeah.
It's,
I don't blame him for being nervous.
so, we've talked about stuff like this before, Patrick, and, we usually come up with all kinds of goofy ways to get, because some situations you just don't have the ability, like they pointed out, to put a proper sister joist in. And we've talked about splitting a piece of plywood with a hole drilled in the middle for the pipe and then gluing and screwing that on. And there looks like there's enough room for them to do a partial sister joist, maybe kind of notched around the pipe. But, I was searching around and I found this company in, where is it? Burnt Hills, New York, called Nolan Engineering. And this is a structural engineer. And they've got this strap that looks like it takes about, 30 of those little structural screws you use for joist hangers and other Simpson type hardware. And they sell these straps in different lengths. And it's a joist strap that goes on the bottom of the joist and spans the gap. And they say our joist strap is a safe way to repair the joist, created by structural engineers who know all about load-bearing requirements.
I don't know. That's not
You can actually
promising.
buy it on
Why are you
Amazon
laughing?
you can buy it on Amazon for about $40.
Seems
It's really just a big
hurt.
strap with a lot of holes in it.
It's a hurricane strap, right? And what it's doing is it's resisting the tension, right, that the sagging floor joist would impart on the bottom of it, right?
Yep. And we've talked about using metal strapping as a way to stiffen whole floor systems before. But hey, why not use it at least as part of the solution for a joist like this? Because really the load is where the joist wants to spread at the bottom.
So why are we laughing so hard? It seems like a reasonable solution.
I was laughing at hard because designed by structural engineers who understand all about loading, like that's just pretty great.
Okay.
I'm also laughing because sometimes I'm out here in my shop office at the end of the day looking at stuff, preparing for the podcast the next morning. And sometimes Carol comes out with a beer at about 5:30. And yesterday was one of those days, and I showed her the photograph of Nathan's floor joist. And I was like, what would you tell Nathan about how to fix this? And she said, well, you have to tell him to see an engineer. And I was like, yeah. And I was like, that's probably good advice. I was like, I would tell him to do that. And she's like, well, you have to. I was like, as a journalist, you can't tell him to fix this any other way. It's like, okay. So, Nathan, you have to see an engineer.
Straight from the mouth of Carol.
So there's like, 3 or 4 inches below this pipe that I think you could sister on, right, Rob?
For sure, yeah. You could definitely beef it up some.
And I think it should be steel because steel is, for the dimensions, stronger than wood, right? Wood has an amazing strength to weight ratio, but you can't make something as strong in 4 inches with wood as you can with steel. Barring, if you didn't want to use steel, consult an engineer and put that strap on the bottom. Or put a post under it.
Is there any way, this might be a dumb question, but is there any way to like redistribute the weight of the actual tub by like elevating it or something?
Well, so that's what's happened, right? That's why it hasn't fallen through the floor, because the subfloor is spreading that load across, the adjacent floor joist, right? It's so funny. Anyone who's been in remodeling, who's worked on like working class houses has seen this so often. And you say to yourself, like, how does a 400-pound bathtub that can be full of, 200 pounds or 300 pounds of water and somebody who's 200 or 300 pounds not fall through the floor?
Right.
And it's amazing to me that it doesn't, but it's because of the distributed load, as you suggest, Kiley, because of the subfloor, I'm sure.
Well, I was thinking about like actually elevating it onto a
so in other words, build a platform that spans wider than the joist. I mean,
that's what I was thinking.
Well, then you could fix the joist too, because you could put the plumbing higher.
While you're at
it. So many people and, pros and amateurs alike would just close up the ceiling and pretend they never saw it. And the reality is it probably would be fine.
Let's not.
Wood structures are so redundant that they almost never collapse, right? It's amazing to me. And if you live in New England and see the wonky barns and wonky old farmhouses that have, inadequate footings, like somehow they don't fall down.
They do get crooked though.
Yeah, I mean, it's always good if you have the opportunity to try to solve a problem like that. But like you said, how old is this house? If it hasn't moved and that joist was there cut whenever that tub was put in many years ago. So.
Or the newer plumbers did it. He's had 3 plumbers work on this plumbing now, right? Because it was the guy who did the work originally, and he's had 2 plumbers come and try and rerun the trap, and they all had a crack at destroying this joist. Jeff, do you have a good solution to this?
Well, no, I was just going to say that probably contributes to the plumbing leak too, because there's a lot more flex in that.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. Those connections need to be, locked in position. Otherwise, the slip joints will definitely start to leak if they're stressed.
Yeah.
All right, this is from Jon in St. Louis. Hey guys, I've attached some pics of the sheathing in my house and garage. It's junk. At least I know that a plastic vapor barrier was installed behind the sheathing on the house. Not so much on the garage though, which I'd like to insulate. Oh, did I mention my brick reservoir cladding? And is this a case for the 5-sided box of 15-pound felt inside the stud base? Any other options? Please help. Thanks for all you do. Okay, and I mentioned Adam wrote in about our blower door numbers. So he wrote in with a similar question that I'm going to read now. We had planned to do air sealing in our 1960s era cape when we replaced all of the siding. I expected this to be a fairly straightforward process of removing the soffit, adding sheathing to the underside of the roof deck, and this wrapping the house in some peel and stick. When you pointed out in episode 251 that my walls are sheathed in Celotex instead of plywood or OSB, that put a monkey wrench into what I had assumed was the most straightforward part of the project. I can't find a peel and stick membrane that documents that it works over Celotex or fiberboard. So the options that I can find are put a fluid applied membrane. I found at least one that says it works with fiberboard, but it sounds like a mess, and I worry about detailing the gaps between sheathing. I could run some zip sheathing directly over the Celotex. I can remove the Celotex and resheathe with zip system. While this would obviously cost more, I could then also insulate the stud base from the outside and maybe update some electrical wiring.
Ding, 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 ding.
Are there any other options that I am missing? Do any of these options have problems that should eliminate them? Okay. Wow. So these two folks have this fibrous sheathing, and they want to know how to air seal this material, which is notoriously air permeable, right? It is like, if you've never seen it, it looks like a Brillo pad, except it's wood fibers.
And it always fails, right?
And it just lets air blow right through it. And it's coated with like kind of an asphalt to make it waterproof, but it doesn't make it airproof. Kylie, you had some strong opinions, it would seem, about this very subject. It just seems
like, it sounds like the Celotex, judging from the article that I read on GBA that you put a link up to, is not a good product. And that if he has an opportunity to get rid of it and to make these other upgrades, I don't know.
Well, we've got two situations here, one from the exterior, one from the interior. So the guy with the brick reservoir cladding is not going to be tearing his sheet.
Right. No, I'm referring to this guy with the Celotex.
For Adam, I mean, certainly that's kind of the route I went with my house, but I didn't have sheathing at all. Is I just thought it was worth it to go the extra step of tearing the old siding down to the studs, and then I could do better insulation, and it would make it easier for me to do some wiring, which is exactly the kind of things he's guessing he might have the opportunity to do. But I can tell you that when you start tearing apart houses, it's amazing how much time and how many garbage cans you fill up with debris. You probably need a dumpster for sure. But
God, yeah. And if this is a house of any size, and if it's 2 stories, this is a freaking huge undertaking, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Now, Martin had talked about this in a couple, answering people on similar questions on GBA, Martin Holliday, a while back. And, his first suggestion was to do a high quality house wrap. Nobody seemed to feel confident that any tapes or self-adhering things would work with that.
Would stick to this, right? It's not. It doesn't lend itself to things sticking to it.
Yeah. So like something like a Siga or Proclima product, he was suggesting. But then someone said if money was no object, they might consider a liquid applied WRB. But at that point, you're probably going to be cheaper just doing the whole tear off and put some new sheathing up. I don't know.
Is it?
I don't know about
still
that.
On the market? Is this something that's still on the market, or
no?
It's out of business. It's out of business, right?
Well, there are similar products made out of materials that are acceptable by today's standards, and I think some of them are made in Canada. But this was a material that I think it might even had asbestos in it. Is that true,
okay.
Patrick? I know some of them did.
When was it popular in this 70s? Is that when it was being used?
I saw it a lot in houses from the 50s and 60s era, and it was often behind brick, and I think that's because builders said, well, this doesn't have the impact resistance of wood sheathing, but we have brick. So we can use this less expensive sheathing, but it turns out that it's like the worst combination possible is to have a reservoir cladding and this very vapor open material, especially when you're in a cooling climate or a mixed climate, because as the sun heats that brick, it drives all the moisture through this fibrous material and it condenses on the backside of the drywall because that's the coldest place in the assembly. And the article that I linked in the script this morning describes these developments where numbers of homes had this problem, and it put the builder out of business, and it's really expensive to fix.
Wound up with like I thought the air conditioning on the inside wound up recreating a situation where didn't they end up like a foot of water in the studs? I mean, they were like wringing out.
It was
the
running out of the
insulation.
bottom of the walls, right?
I can't even believe it. It's hard to picture, but man.
Yeah, so,
Everyone's silent there.
It just sounds so horrible.
So yeah, I mean, basically
within 10 weeks, they said these houses were completely filled with water.
So
we're sure
questions. Yeah,
that we're sure that Jon and Adam don't have this problem, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. It's a very difficult thing to fix. I would definitely explore the cost of the spray applied WRB and replacing it all. Rob thinks that the WRB is going to be more expensive. If you're paying someone to do the work, I definitely don't think that would be true. If you're paying someone to demo all the sheathing, redo it, and reside the house, and flash windows and integrate them, that's very labor intensive. If you're doing that yourself, that might be a wash, but you're going to spend many, many, many hours doing this work.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, if you could find a good for the exterior one for Adam, Adam's the exterior one, right? Yeah, if you could find a good, a high quality, sheet applied WRB and tape the seams, or go with the liquid applied. Now for the interior one with Jon, like he said, he suggested what we've mentioned before and has been published before on the website is the tar
five-sided box.
Yeah, build a box inside each stud bay. It's a little labor intensive, but it's a pretty straightforward way to deal with it.
And the great thing about felt paper is its permeability increases when you need it to, right? Mm-hmm. If you have higher moisture loading, it allows that more readily to pass through it. So it seems like it's the ideal material for this. And let's keep in mind, it's for, in the case of Jon in St. Louis, it's for his garage shop, right? So I think the bar is a little lower for a space that you're not using all the time and that has a little greater tolerance for getting wet than the interior of your house, which might have carpeting or other things that definitely should not get wet.
Yeah.
This is how you would have done your house, Rob, correct, if you hadn't pulled the siding off to air seal from the outside. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's definitely one of the options I could have chosen.
You have not done this, though?
No, I have not. No, I mean, I've in the few places where I've done work from the inside of my house, I've done the cut and cobble foam, leaving it spaced off of the outside cladding to keep a little bit of an air gap there. I found that the wood in my house is pretty resilient, being the big, chunky, old, solid timbers. So I'm not as worried about moisture getting down and rotting away my framing. But
well, and you have all those CFM air changes to dry everything out too when it gets soaking wet.
Yeah, but you know what? The more I do this kind of work to my house, the more it's affecting the whole dynamic of the house in particular areas. Like the basement, like I've told you, is way more damp than it used to be, and that has a lot to do with all the air sealing that I've done to the house.
Well, it also has to do with you took your 150,000 BTU boiler out of the basement and all the associated piping that was, heating and drying that space throughout the winter, right?
Yep, for sure.
It's interesting to me that you say you have these beefy timbers and you don't worry about rot. Have you seen the houses that Mason is replacing the mud sills on? Those are some big old timbers, and they are wet and rotted.
Yeah. A lot of that stuff is those old houses. There's no flashing on the windows, and they're sitting right down in the ground.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's it. Is they're sitting right on the masonry that is just totally wicking water from the soil all the time.
Yeah.
There was no, sill seal or decoupling to prevent that. So, what should we tell these guys in summation here? So, Jon. Yes, put your 5-sided boxes in your stud base, build your shop, enjoy it. Adam is a little tougher, right? He's talking about his whole house and air sealing it. And honestly, whatever solution you go with, man, is going to be expensive. So
I'll tell you this, from my experience, I mean, if I had all the time in the world, I would tear off all the clapboards on my house and redo the sheathing and redo the insulation in the base, but it's it's a lot of work, and I think there's like just enough kind of solution with some of these types of things. I mean, I think sometimes we worry about these details a lot more than we have to. But I would lean towards trying to find the simplest solution by putting a reasonably well detailed WRB on the outside of that material.
I think that's a good solution, Rob. I really do. Because those products are not too expensive, and if you are a kind of person who has good attention to detail, you can do a really good job that method, I'm sure, with regard to air sealing. But you have to care.
Yep.
Is liquid flashing exceptionally expensive?
It depends on who you ask, Kiley. The WRB dealer that I did a feature article with said it wasn't. Mm-hmm. Other people I've talked to said it is. But I think it's, 2 or 3 times the price of house wrap for sure, right?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think the big thing about that is that you're similar to something like AeroSeal. You're getting everything in one process. Mm-hmm. If you're talking about labor costs, that's where you're probably saving a lot on a liquid applied WRB.
Faster.
Oh man, and to my eye, it looks bulletproof. Like there is not going to be a seam pop open. It's not going to come off in the wind. It's a very thick coating. Like water is not going to get through it. And I know it's been the fix for houses with some cheap grades of OSB are actually air permeable. Folks who have built high performance houses have discovered, right? You have to pick the right one. And so when they picked the wrong one, the fix was to do a spray applied WRB to improve air tightness. So, I mean, I think it's a good product. It doesn't have a long-term history in the residential marketplace, but they've been using it in the commercial sector for decades, and I think it's proven its value. Those buildings have to perform, and the people who build them do very complicated life cycle analysis and calculate these things down to the penny to see if the decisions there make financial sense.
Do you think a lot of builders who are working on high performance homes right now are using liquid flashing? Do you think that's becoming more common?
I can't answer that, Kiley. I've met several, but I don't know if it's a norm. Do you know, Rob?
No, I mean, I think it's, like it seems to be following the same trajectory that mineral wool did in the United States. I mean, Canada's been using mineral wool insulation for decades in residential, but it's only been a commercial product in a lot of places in our country. But it's starting to get more recognition. I mean, only just recently did I start seeing it in my local Home Depot, and so I imagine WRB is going to follow the same kind of path. It's like once people start getting to know it, it's going to pick up some steam.
I will say that, production, new home builders, dollars are everything. And frankly, the home warranties are too short. A year is not long enough in most cases for problems to materialize. So I don't think you're going to see it in that sector, but people who care about the houses you build, I do think it's going to have greater acceptance. Or if lawsuits make them, if you have to fix things because of class action lawsuits, you start to change your methods because it's expensive. But if you don't have to, a lot of folks don't.
Yeah, that's a good point.
This is Cory. Hi there, currently listening to your podcast from episode 1. I work 10 hours a day, 6 days a week, so I've currently listened to about 50 hours of you guys. My question, my garage was a 1-car, then the previous owner added a second bay, making it a 2-car garage. The addition is my workshop. The ceiling has 24-inch centers, and just about every piece of drywall is sagging at the joint. I've been in the attic, which is nothing but insulation and a plastic vapor barrier. I'm wondering if I pull the sheetrock down, can I hang, say, 1/2 inch or 3/4 inch plywood on the ceiling and then hang sheetrock to the plywood? My reasoning is to keep the sheetrock held up securely, and B, it's my workshop, so I'll be able to have lights and jet air purification units hanging from the ceiling. If there's thick plywood behind the drywall, I won't have to look for studs again and will be able to hang things wherever I want from the ceiling. Any thoughts or opinions would be appreciated. I'm not a pro, but I just recently re-sheetrocked a wall in my house, so now I'm a pro.
Love it.
So how big did he say these joists were? How tall?
They're 24 inches apart, Rob.
But I mean, what are they? 2x8, 6s? What are they? Did he not say?
Yeah, sure.
I mean, I guess that was my biggest concern. I mean, sure, it'd be nice to have solid nailing and blocking behind something like that, but that's a lot of weight you're adding to the ceiling there. I don't know. I'd have to know a little bit more information. But what are your thoughts?
I think that the sheetrock is not sagging because the spacing between the joists is too far. I've built a lot of houses with roof trusses and ceiling joists on 24-inch centers, and using 1/2-inch drywall and thick layers of insulation. But what will make it sag is if it's getting wet, right?
Sure.
So moisture from this garage, it's probably coming from the unconditioned space, builds up at certain times of the year and makes the drywall all saggy. I think you could fix the sagginess this method, but I would also want to slow down the moisture that probably contributed to this sagginess to begin with. As far as like replacing the drywall and adding the additional weight of plywood, that shouldn't be a problem in most cases, I would guess, but garages are often so underbuilt. They are meant to be super cheap space to keep the weather off your car. They're not meant to have kids running around or, jacuzzi hot tubs or, china cabinets full of dishes. It's really lightweight space. So you got to check it out. Look in the code for the ceiling joints tables and see if you're close. And that'll guide what you do from there. And as far as fixing the moisture problem, we've talked about a number of ways to do that. And some people have criticized my suggestion for painting stuff with latex paint because it slows moisture, but I think that's a great way.
A lot of people suggest that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess really it is one of the things to do is to try to figure out what kind of moisture level he's got in this space first. And if it's coming through a slab, then a lot of the finishes that you can put on a nice concrete slab are not necessarily going to be have the longevity if there's a lot of moisture.
They're going to pop off.
Yeah,
they won't stick if there's a lot of vapor drive.
Yeah, I mean, we got a lot of people building workshops that are no longer garages. In that case, it's not a bad idea to put down some rigid foam and then some plywood on top of that, just as a floating floor. It's a nice solution if you don't need that concrete floor exposed.
And it's more comfortable to work on than concrete too.
Sounds warmer too.
It would be. But Cory, keep listening to the podcast. You're only in episode, I don't know, 7 or 8. Like, we're going to talk about this stuff for many of your listening hours going forward. So you're going to be all set.
We're not that far away from our 300th episode. Did you notice that?
I feel every one in my bones.
Because you're standing on concrete.
Did we help this guy at all?
Well, I mean, like you said, if he's got sagging drywall, moisture is definitely a factor, a likely culprit.
It could have been that insulation got all wet from a roof leak or something too, and made the drywall all wet, right?
For sure.
Yeah, I think your suggestion, Rob, is good. Monitor the humidity, for a few months and see what's going on in there seasonally. And if you're using the space regularly, I think that'll help because you'll have the doors open and you'll be running, presumably dust collection or whatever, which is like insane air changes. Although he is in, where is he in? I want to say he was in St. Louis, so it's pretty humid there. I'm pretty sure it was St. Louis. So it's humid. It's going to be seasonally very wet. What about your shop, Rob? Have you done more weatherization work out there?
So I'm starting to think about that. Like you said earlier, this is the time of year where you start to panic because you got to finish all your fall projects before it gets cold. I've got big barn doors that don't seal at all on the front of my barn, because I salvaged an old barn siding and doors to build the thing. So
you have the quintessential sliding doors on the front of your barn on the gable end, right?
Yeah. So the backside of my wood shop area is some old sliding doors from the 70s. They're double pane, and I'm sure they don't seal that well. But like we've said before, when you're heating a shop, you just need it to. I'm not keeping this place conditioned 24 hours a day. I just need it to hold heat from a little portable heater, just enough to take the chill off when I'm working out there, which is not going to happen that great with my big leaky barn doors. So I'm trying to figure out, do I build some winter sort of shutters on the inside, maybe, some thin plywood and some insulation panel doors, or do I just go and try to tighten up those doors and put some weather stripping on them? I'm not really sure. I mean, I've even thought about scrapping the barn doors and putting some nice French doors with side lights in the opening. But
that would be cool, but that's not going to be cheap.
Well, Facebook Marketplace.
I think what you should do, and this just came to me, you leave the sliding barn doors there because they're beautiful, right? Mm-hmm. But on the inside, you have panels with a entry door in them, right? Yeah. And seasonally, you swap these things. And so you slide open the barn doors, and then you have this hinged entry door on this panel behind. Is that a great idea or what?
Yeah, that's definitely that would definitely be one of the simplest options.
And you could actually get it done in a weekend instead of like making it a huge project, which increasingly is what I'm shooting for.
Yeah, I've got too many of those on the list already. Yeah, and and I've got a good loft space above there with plenty of room. So if I made seasonal doors, I could just make them so they come apart
and go up there
and go up there when I'm not using them. Yeah.
Do you want to talk about some of the cool things that are coming up with regard to the Taunton store, Rob, and our products?
Well, it is approaching the holiday season, and that's when we do have quite a few sales happening. So October and November is when we start getting a lot of pretty big sales. So keep an eye out in the Taunton store. I think it's just tauntonsstore.com. Is that right? It's not on our actual website. It's let me just get here, but actually.
Isn't this your job?
Yeah, it is my job. You always seem to catch me at a time when I'm not thinking about it. But basically, just tauntonsstore.com is where you go for any of the books, back issues, magazines, subscriptions. But you kind of caught me off guard there because we're not having the flash sales yet in the Taunton store. What we really want to talk about now is membership, and we've mentioned multiple times on the podcast that we're building these project guides on the website to try to make it easier for our members and just for any casual visitors to finehomebuilding.com to find what they're looking for on specific projects. And we're just wrapping up the roofing guide. So actually, by the time this podcast airs, I think the roofing guide might even be live. We're shooting for an October launch date. And but one thing I think I've mentioned a few times before is that we have, as part of the online membership to our website, we have the archives, which include every single issue of the magazine ever printed, and it's a nice interface. And it used to be something you'd buy on a DVD or a USB drive, but now it's built right into the website. So you just go to the navigation bar at the top of the page, and you can find the Fine Homebuilding archives in there. And even if you're just a casual user of the website and you're just looking for an old article, there's also a magazine index if you go to the navigation bar at the top of the website too. But we'll be having sales on membership as we get into the holiday season. So
I'm going to add that so the Fine Homebuilding brand is celebrating its 40th anniversary next year. And obviously we're planning some special things with regard to magazine content and other areas of the company. But I helped Chuck Miller with the tips department in every issue, and we're going to run some classic tips. So I went to the office the other day and picked up the first 5 issues of Fine Homebuilding, and I can tell you it is really enjoyable to browse these old issues. We did some wacky stuff back in the day, and it is super entertaining to read. Really interesting architectural designs, just fun stuff. And if you are a member of the website, you can look at this stuff at any time, and gosh, it's entertaining. I've enjoyed this immensely, looking at these old things.
Well, Chuck Miller at the time was our West Coast editor. In fact, he was even living in California, I think, when he first started working for the magazine, working remotely. And there was some pretty funky, cutting-edge stuff happening out in California in the early 80s. And, there seems to be sort of a range of the types of projects that we feature in the magazine nowadays. Back then, it seems like it was no holds barred. Like there was some crazy earth berms, solar houses.
Love it.
This is steel. Like, and I don't know what's going on here, but it's crazy, right?
Yeah,
It's like something Rob would build.
Patrick is holding up a back cover. Yeah, that's one of the things to go to the archive too. Is the back cover has some crazy photos of stuff that people were building. He just held up a photograph of this house. It kind of looked like a giant piggy
Elephant.
bank.
Yeah.
Elephant. Yeah, it kind of looked like a giant elephant protruding out of a hillside, made entirely out of rusty steel.
Only in California. Hey,
Oh,
you
man.
guys haven't talked about the summit much, or maybe you have when I haven't been on, but is there any update there?
That's actually a good point. We are unfortunately, we have to have it remotely this year. Everybody knows that we're not having any major live events. And if you go to finehomebuilding.com/summit, certainly because it's not a live event with a hotel venue, it's a lot more affordable than it was.
And you can attend from anywhere, which, right, you're not limited to how far a reasonable drive is from
and that's the thing.
Massachusetts, right?
We were only limited to a couple of hundred people last time. So there were people that missed out on it just because we sold out all the tickets. So we basically have an unlimited supply of tickets now. And we're doing our best. Rather than just the typical webinar platform, we've got this platform that allows a little more robust interactive experience. So we'll be having the same main presentations, and then these breakout sessions into smaller groups, and even a more more personal, interactive experience, so that we feel like we're having as close as we can to that same great experience that we had last year. And hopefully we'll be having another live one, in the coming year. But so it's, let me just take a look here.
Are all the speakers listed on the site?
Yes. So let me go here right now. So finehomebuilding.com/summit is where you're going to go to find this. We'll put a link on the podcast page. And we've got Peter Joist, Michael Maines, Jordan Goldman, who's a mechanical and HVAC expert. We've got Mike Gerton, who I think everybody should know, Ben Bogey, Dan Colbert, Marian Casado, who's an architect we featured in the magazine a lot. And the list goes on. There's a whole bunch of people in here, and it's just like last year, a lot of it is focused on high performance building methods and strategies. And it's October. It's the week of October 26th to the 29th is when all the classes are happening. And if you go to the summit page right now, you can see all the course summaries, all the bios of the speakers, and go ahead and register now. Basically, the tickets. We had an early bird thing going on, but I'm not sure if that's still going to be going on by the time this podcast airs. But it's a fraction of the cost of what it was to attend in person. And so I hope we all see the same people that we saw there last year, and even more, since people, no matter where you are in the world, you can be attending these sessions.
And it's fun.
And it's going to be information packed.
Yeah. As Patrick said, in the last time we talked about this, it was one of the highlights of his career was attending that event. And I think that was the consensus across the board.
It was
when
fantastic.
we were there. It was an amazing event, and it's we're going to do our best to keep that same energy going in this virtual event.
I can't wait. It's going to be awesome. Well, unfortunately, that's all the time we have today. Thanks to Rob, Kiley, and Jeff for joining me, and thanks to all of you for listening. Please remember to send us your questions to fhbpodcast@taunton.com. And please like, comment, or review us however you're listening. It helps other folks find our podcast. And folks, if you would, please go to iTunes or YouTube and subscribe to the podcast. And please leave your feedback there if you like the show. Even if you don't, we do pay attention, and we do try and make the show as good as it can be for y'all. And thanks so much for listening. Stay safe and happy building.